Okay, quick disclaimer before we get started. The Blockmates podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. The information and opinions expressed on the podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Blockmates or its affiliates. Listeners are encouraged to do their own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Blockmates and its affiliates are not liable for any losses or damages incurred as a result of the reliance on the information or opinions expressed on this podcast. Right, welcome back, everyone. We've got VC from Socket. This has been a long time coming. We've been going back and forth. I got ill, you got ill, so I'm glad we could finally nail it down. But thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate the flexibility as well with respect to times. But yeah, glad we both got out of the flu.
Both survived it. Yeah, as I was saying, there's a couple of our team who's been down and out with it as well. So I think it's just that middle part of the year where everyone's completely ran down and burnt out. I don't know what's going to happen in a roaring bull market if this is what's happening in like one of the most annoying markets of all time. But here we are.
Absolutely, man. I totally get
it. So I suppose let's kind of set a scene for the listeners and viewers. I suppose can we give them a bit of background on yourself, like how you've kind of ended up to where we are today, and then we can obviously slowly get into the product. But I'd love to hear a little bit on your backstory, if that's all right.
Oh yeah, man. I think I've been pretty lucky with how I got to enter the space, and my history as well. So happy to share some context there. But yeah, man, basically kind of been in the space for the last, 5-6 years, joining like 17, 18 with the bull market. I sold my phone, I got my Bitcoin. It was basically all the money I had. So I was like, oh shit, now we have to learn how this shit works because the number has to go up. Otherwise I'm screwed, That's how I think everyone starts in this space. But yeah, I was I think just on 18 or 19 back then. So I had a MetaMask account before I had a bank account. So got to kind of come in the hard way. Started contributing to open source as a college student. Still studying on the side. When I met one of the founders of Matic, they were just starting, so it was just the 3 founders. So I got to come in as the first employee there on the tech side of things. Got to lead the tech team there, build Polygon POS. So I've been, since I come from a third world country like India, I've been pretty passionate about, how do we, get transactions on Ethereum to be cheaper as much as possible, because that's the only way I can appear cool to my friends, or kind of show them that this is the Ethereum thing that I'm working on. If I go to them and it's like $20 to do an on-chain transaction, they'll be like, "Fuck off, man! This is something that we won't touch." Yeah. So scaling is like very primitive to me. That's why Polygon. I built the Polygon POS chain, but then really wanted to figure out the L2 stuff. So back in 2019, with Barry Whitehead from Ethereum Foundation, I built the first ever ZK rollup. Once I built that, I was like 100% convinced that this is how Ethereum would scale. So after Polygon went mainnet, I was like, my job here is done. I joined Ethereum Foundation, worked with Barry Whitehead and a bunch of other people, and developed a bunch of things. One of those was a way to customize or like optimize optimistic rollups via BLS signatures and all the stuff. During that time, I also really got interested in MEV stuff. So helped build the first version of Flashbots. During this time also, I started building like a strong conviction on this multi-layered future. If it's going to be multi-chain or multi-L2, it does not really matter. The ultimate truth is that if you want to scale Ethereum, we need to have as many L2s as possible. And as soon as that became very clear to me, interop became the biggest problem to solve. How do we get people on one chain to collaborate with people on another chain? How do we get asset movements, seamless? How do we get function calls across chains in the most seamless manner? So at the end, Socket solving the interop problem, but it's all linked towards scalability. We believe solving the interop problem will solve the scalability problem. So yeah, that's some context on how we kind of got to the shit.
Nice, man. That's some kind of pedigree coming into, particularly with the Polygon background. What was that like in the early days? There was it completely manic?
Man, it was pretty weird, man. So we were working out of this, really really small area in Mumbai, which is like
Yeah.
central India, and we were working out of a co-working space, such that if I'm kind of coding over here, and there is rain outside, there would be a bucket over here to catch the water droplets that's falling from the roof. Yeah, so it was like we did not have a lot of money, but it was a lot of fun. That's for sure.
Yeah, with it being so recent, I suppose it keeps you grounded, keeps you humble, and stuff like that as well, which I think is always a good thing in this space because it's so full of very lavish and people who like to kind of forget like the hard work and where they've all came from and stuff like that. So I bet it's nice to kind of look back on stuff like that and just think, yeah,
Oh
see how
man.
far you've kind of come.
Totally, man. I think just the fact that we are working in conditions like those, and just like having fun, and at the same time we were contributing to code bases of Tendermint and code bases of Get and stuff like that. So it was like really high quality work being done out of such a small kind of place. It truly says how global crypto is. I love it.
Absolutely love it. Yeah. So I suppose let's get into it. Like, can you give us a high level of what is Socket, just for people who might have came across some of the products that are built on Socket, but it's always great to hear it from the source. So yeah, floor's yours.
Yeah, man. Happy to. I think Socket's kind of like a invisible Trojan horse right now, meaning that you've most likely interacted with the Socket product without actually knowing that it's being powered by Socket underneath the hood. But to give like a quick background on or like context on what Socket is an interop solution that allows you to send assets and messages across chains in the most efficient manner possible. And the way that we are achieving this is extremely different than any other interop protocol out there, in the sense that when we looked at things, we look at things in a much more like industry-wide fashion than trying to differentiate ourselves from the competition, or trying to kind of build something that's very, how do I put it, like capturing the market or stuff like that. We almost kind of approach it from a very dev first mindset on like what does the industry need from this infrastructure right now. So Socket is kind of built out that allows people to send assets and messages across chain, and using this you can build absolutely anything you want across chain. So you can have a function on this chain talking to a function on or a smart contract on another chain, and this basically kind of unlocks the composability that we all really like on a single chain. It unlocks the ability for us for applications to compose across chains, across layers, and that has like kind of almost infinite use cases. Any sort of EVM use case or non EVM use case, it can be expanded into a cross chain use case. So we are building out the infrastructure. We are very excited about what people build using this infrastructure, and we are trying our absolute best to build out the best infrastructure that people need to build these kind of products.
Yeah, I love that. So what's like if we use a product like Bungee, for example? So what's actually happening under the hood? Obviously, for a user, if anyone hasn't used it, it's like the fantastic UI UX. It truly is. Not just saying that because you're here, but so what's actually happening under the hood there for, say, cross chain asset transfer?
Yeah, I think Bungie, when we first started building Socket, it was just like, Socket's an infrastructure company. So we totally love this part of it. We want to be as invisible as possible. We want to enable things. We don't want to be, out there in front of, faces. But as any infrastructure product, you first need to kind of showcase what this infrastructure can do in order to kind of help people, help developers, help product managers, help founders visualize what this infrastructure can do out there. So we built out Bungee as like a showcase of the kind of UI UX that you can build in a cross-chain setting if you work with Socket. Yeah, as the infrastructure provider for all of these kind of setups. So what Bungee does, it's a very lightweight UI on top of Socket's infrastructure. What it allows is you can start from any chain, any token, and end with any chain, any token, right? So you can think about it in a lot of different ways, which is probably a good and bad thing, right? So you can think about Bungee as a universal transfer protocol, meaning that you have some USDC on Polygon, you can send it to your friend who might be on zk-Sync, who might be on Ethereum, who might be on Arbitrum, and that guy can be like, I only accept Aave tokens as kind of my utility, or like I just want to accept payments in Aave. So you can use Socket or Bungee as this like universal transfer protocol where you can send any asset to anyone on any chain in any token, right? You can also think about Bungee as a universal kind of swapping thing, right? Where you can input a token from any chain and output another token to any chain, right? So you can start with any token and get any token on any network you want, right? So it's almost like Uniswap, but stretched across any chain, essentially speaking. Right. So there are like multiple ways to look at Bungee, but at the end, it's being powered by Socket. Every time you do something on Bungee, it internally, kind of pings Socket APIs, it pings Socket contracts, and it kind of, aggregates third-party asset bridges, builds third-party native bridges, third-party asset bridges like CCTP, stuff like that. So, it basically abstracts away all the complexity. You just tell what you want to get done, and Bungee will, kind of do exactly that.
Yeah, love that. So obviously with interoperability, particularly cross-chain, people's mind would potentially immediately go to bridges and cross-chain asset transfer. Can you give us kind of a high level from your perspective what like interoperability truly means, and where are the kind of blue oceans for applications to actually tap into that, if that makes sense?
That's a solid question. I think Airdrop means like different things for different people, or like different projects, right? For example, if you are an application on L2, on let's say Arbitrum and Optimism today, um, majority of the liquidity is on Ethereum L1, or let's say on stuff like Polygon or stuff like BSC. L2 is just starting up, right? So if you're a project building on L2, your primary goal is to get as much liquidity from these ecosystems and move them to Arbitrum, and from there move them to your product, right? So whenever you are building a product, you want to kind of focus on customer acquisition as much as possible, right? So interop for these projects might mean solving the liquidity problem, how to suck liquidity from everywhere else and onto their chain, onto their protocol, right? So interop for them is how do we allow a user on Polygon to do a single transaction on Polygon and deposit into my protocol on Arbitrum, right? We did this exact same thing for GMX. People can check it out at gmx.socket.tech. So GMX uses Socket to allow people from any chain using any token to directly mint GLP on Arbitrum and Avalanche, right? Once this happens, it's like the perfect onboarding flow. You've solved the liquidity problem. People from all chains, all assets can use your protocol. So this is what interop would mean from like let's say L2 dev perspective, right? What does interop mean from something like Coinbase Commerce perspective? Coinbase Commerce, for people who might not know, it's like a payment protocol where you want to raise an invoice, you give out that invoice, give people this link, people click on that link and they can pay you whatever money they owe you. Yeah. So from Coinbase Commerce perspective, they would use this protocol almost as like Stripe but for blockchain, right? Where Coinbase Commerce wants to accept payments on Ethereum, but their users might be on like all chains and holding like any sort of asset. So a user holding Aave on Polygon wants to pay a bill that's in USDC on Ethereum, right? So for them, they can use this infrastructure almost as Stripe. So just click a button, it will take your Aave, it will swap it, it will bridge it, and give it to Coinbase Commerce on Ethereum, right? So yeah, I think there are like a couple of perspective here, depending on what are you building. But interop is definitely useful for almost everyone in the space, and 100% recommend people looking into the docs and figuring out how to use it to make the product better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, particularly with the amount of developments in the L2 space, and I don't even think we've scratched the surface of what probably will be the case in the near future. And I suppose on on the non-EVM front as well, like you've got to think. I spend a lot of time looking at projects built on Solana. We're very, very close friends with the Hero Network guys. And whilst everyone's kind of slating Solana, I still like to kind of check out what's going on there. But it truly is that issue of what you've just said, of liquidity is primarily based on a select few EVM chains. Like, where are these projects going to go and try and attract that capital over? And if it is through Wormhole, no one's going to use it. No one uses Wormhole. Let's be honest. And if there's that layer of, and if there's that layer of friction, you can kind of just write it off. It's you need to, like, the whole space, and I think what Socket kind of stands by is just completely removing that barrier to entry, for particularly for liquidity and for users. So imagine L2s, you see them all the time. Once they have like a decent cross-chain integration, like TVL just spikes massively, because people want to know if they head over there with their funds, it's easy as easy to get on there as it is to get off. Maybe, like, if you're thinking about what's happening on Pulse chain at the minute, no one knows if there's ever going to be a bridge off. So
everyone's just bridging. Nice one. Apes be apes. Yeah.
Even if they can't get access, it's hilarious. So you touched on Coinbase Commerce there, but I've seen you guys kind of integrated with a whole host of really, really big name players in the space. I'd love to just kind of touch upon a few of them from your perspective. Like, which ones are you guys most excited about? I know you mentioned Coinbase, but is there anything a little bit deeper there? Maybe MetaMask and a few other wallets. I'd just love to kind of let the audience have a bit of insight from your perspective, how that's kind of came about, and what you guys are actually doing there.
Yeah, man. I think from our perspective, when we first started looking at this space, it was super clear to us that, okay, man, no matter how many bridges get hacked, people want to move money across chains. Like, that's what the free market wants. Free market wants to move funds across chain, then it's our job to make that happen, and happen securely, and happen in a way that people like it. Yeah. So we started looking at the space. It was very clear to us that asset bridging is going to be a massive use case, and it's probably not going anywhere. And it also became very clear to us that all of this multi-chain complexity, it should probably be handled on the wallet level and not on the developer level, right? Like, you can't be expecting people who have one developer who's building like the contract, the back end, the front end, to also be like, okay, shit, now I have to handle 10 chains and kind of help people move money across these chains. And this is only going to increase. How many L2s do we have at this point? Do you have a number?
Off the top of my head, Optimism, Arbitrum, you had Boba, you had Metis, you obviously got the ZKs coming on chain. Build on base, Starknet.
Yeah. So probably 10 plus.
Yeah, exactly. Easy. And I'd hazard a guess, every application worth its salt will have its own L2.
Yeah, exactly.
In the near future as well.
So. Exactly. So this is only increasing, man, is what I'm saying. And the rate at which these chains or like these L2s are getting spun up, it's increasing already. Like, we have I think at least 12 roll-up as a service protocols, and it just kind of indicates where we are going next, right? So kind of expecting people building on top of these layers, these VMs, to kind of also handle the multi-chain stuff, it's kind of crazy, right? So it was very, very clear to us that all of this should be abstracted away by wallets once and for all, and all the people will then just kind of use these wallets, and wallets will abstract away all the multi-chain complexity. So we started working with a lot of wallets from day one, right? So right now, just to give you a sense of where Socket is, Socket is a top 5 contract on all L2s that we are deployed on. 7 out of 10 of like top 10 applications on Optimism use Socket for everything bridging. This includes like Tails, Premia, Synthetics ecosystem, a bunch of names which I don't even remember. Socket, so a bunch of other kind of portfolio applications and third-party bridging interfaces that you see in the market, or like wallets that you see in the market. I think it's 80. I think 82% of them use Socket right now. So this includes things like Zapper, like Zerion, like Rainbow Wallet, Sequence Wallet, Empire Wallet, Coinbase Wallet, MetaMask. So the TLDR is a bunch of wallets users and a bunch of DeFi applications like GMX, Synthetics. They use us on Optimism and Arbitrum. And we are seeing this become a trend, meaning that as soon as the L2 launches, people want to have uh, good interop with other ecosystems, as we previously talked about, to onboard liquidity into their new ecosystem. So I think this is like kind of becoming a trend now, where a new L2 gets bootstrapped, and Socket is there, and people have a better time with Socket than kind of coming via the native bridges, which only connect to Ethereum and a bunch of problems there. So I think that's a good way to think about the adoption so far.
Yeah. So what does that integration look like on your end? Is there a lot of heavy lifting on your for you guys on the engineering team, or how's that look like? Let's say I've got like the Blockmates L2. I need additional liquidity. I've just spun it up. I haven't, by the way. So if anyone starts creating a shitcoin or anything off the back of that, just ignore I just said that. But yeah, what's that look like? Do you guys have to do any heavy lifting? Because I think it's going to go it's going to be exponential how many L2s there are. And how do you kind of allow that to scale? What's that look like?
That's a solid question, man. So I think on our end, how things are set up right now is it does take some effort and time. We have multiple backend services running that we need to deploy our contracts to be able to do efficient batching, stuff like that. That's a good amount of work right now. I would say about like a week's effort, right? From like two devs, right? I would call this a significant effort, right? This is something that we are solving next. I can't speak too much about it, but this is something that we are solving. Socket, you'll be able to deploy Socket in anywhere you like without talking to the team, right? Let me just put it that way. So we are 100% ready for 55,000 L2s, and for every L2 to be spun up every second, right? We are heading we are heading there along with the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think, are they called alt layer? So it's like the idea behind is it like elastic rollup, so you can deploy it for like an NFT min and then wind it down off the back of it. So it's going to get really crazy really quickly, I think. Do you subscribe to the whole app chain thesis? And I don't know, will it be like a GMX chain one day, do you think? Or do you think everyone will just reside on the L2? Like, how do you think that looks?
That's a solid question, man. I think so the way that I think about it is in the sense of bubbles. Yeah. That's a weird word to use in this context, but let me explain, right? So what's a bubble? Yeah. So I call a bubble where a bunch of applications that compose with each other have to lie close to each other. They have to lie together in a bubble, and applications that you don't interact with that much, they can lie outside the bubble, right? So what I'm getting at is we'll probably kind of see state bubbles form where the entire NFT ecosystem it's on an L2, for example, right? Or maybe OpenSea has an L2, and all the NFT related projects want to be on that L2. Unless it gets too expensive and they don't compose with OpenSea enough, they'll be priced out, right? And at that point, they'll want to create their own L2. So I think this market will kind of dictate how these bubbles form. If you are building something that has to interact with Uniswap or OpenSea very closely, almost every block, then you would want to be on the same L2 as them, right? But if you're building something that does not interact with them, on a daily basis, or can work with them, across chains, then it will be more beneficial for you to rely or set up another L2 for your use case, so that whenever there is a random ERC20 pumping on Uniswap or another NFT mint happening, you are not, or you or your applications or your users are not bothered by it, right? You can reside in your own L2 bubble and not be worried about OpenSea's bubble. Yeah. So I think like market will decide how applications kind of stick to each other or kind of move away in a separate entity.
Very makes sense.
That's
Until OpenSea creates its own chain.
Yeah. You never know, man. You never know.
Yeah, how are you guys looking at? Obviously, Base kind of came out of, well, it didn't really come out of nowhere. You can kind of join the dots, and I think the dots joined back to A16Z.
Yeah,
So there are heavy
100%.
investors in both of them. It's something that you guys will be looking to integrate as early as possible. I think there'll be a lot of liquidity inflows and more liquidity outflows because of how obviously the large user base that Coinbase have already got, the Coinbase wallet and things like that. I think it'd be really interesting. Just wondered if how you guys are thinking about that.
Yeah, man. I think on our end we'll be live on day one. We've announced this publicly already. Coinbase wallet uses Socket exclusively for bridging inside the Coinbase wallet. So we'll have to be there on day one to allow Coinbase wallet to be able to access Base. So yeah, we are going to be there. A bunch of wallets that we work with, a bunch of really top applications products that we work with, they are also going to be there. And I think Base chain, I think they call it, is like a fantastic next step experience from the current centralized exchange experience. I think a bunch of people realized inside Coinbase that this whole centralized experience or this whole like sex future is not happening due to regulatory problems and stuff like that. And there's a lot of liquidity, man. I think even right now, given that we are calling this a bear market, there is still a good amount of liquidity on chain. I mean, I was back in 17, 18 during like another bear market, and the chain was dry. Like there was no liquidity on chain. So this is like really good right now. And I bet centralized exchanges want to kind of tap into decentralized liquidity as well, and Base will be the home ground for it. So I think it's like super positive. We are pretty tight with Coinbase. I think they are moving towards this direction, which we think is really nice. And will only kind of help DeFi boom, help on-chain boom, and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's some crazy statistic of if you onboard 1 or 2% of Coinbase's verified users, like DeFi active users, 2 or 3x's or something. so it's the opportunity is so ridiculous, and I just hope there's like a load of really funny Coinbase memes about Brian being bald on day one.
CD crowd absolutely loves Brian now.
Yeah, he's kind of become the unexpected hero after everything that's happened. I think they kind of not fumbled the bag in the last bull market. They did well, and then they just started listing a load of weird altcoins towards the end. But now it's like he's stood up and probably the only people in the right position to actually take the whole regulation fight. So it's nice and refreshing to see after everyone's tortured him for the past few years.
Did you see the Coinbase One stuff?
No.
Coinbase launched, I think, a subscription service for $30 a month. Okay. And it's like free trading, and apparently this is to support the SEC case. So I think on my end, I'm just loving how Coinbase is milking the fuck out of this whole thing, and just using it as a marketing stunt to get more and more people on board. This is like great to see.
Yeah, I think if they set up in the UK for the derivatives, I'll be quietly surprised and quite impressed that the UK have managed to attract such a company after slowly destroying itself for the past number of years.
Yeah, totally agree.
Oh God. So what if I can get back to cross-chain asset transfer? What do you think? Why do you think we've got to where we are with people being so what would be the word, skeptical about any new advances in cross-chain tech? Do you think it's because of obviously the large amount of kind of bridging hacks from the early iterations of how you would move assets across there? And like what can you guys put out there to kind of be like, look, this is our way of doing it. This is how protocols built on top of us do it. And is there anything to kind of set people's mind at ease, I suppose?
Yeah. Okay. This one might go a little deep, so feel free to stop me somewhere if I get too much in details. But so here's the deal. Yeah. Uh, People figured out that cross-chain in term or founders, entrepreneurs, and people in the space figured out that cross-chain ROI wise is fucking amazing, right? The reason for that is when you use a bridge and your protocol relies on bridge security, your application has bridge security. What that means is building a bridge is super easy. Making it secure is super hard. But because building a bridge is easy, and once people start using it, you capture a lot of value in terms of like protocols building on top. The ROI is massive. The amount of effort you need to put to build a bridge versus the output that you get, it's absolutely crazy, right? People started building a lot of bridges because the ROI is insane. But people forgot to make it secure, and that's how we kind of landed where we are right now, where things are not that good. People focus on the ROI, but the ROI only actually hits if the thing stays for the next 5 years. So I think that's exactly why we landed here, and because the ROI is crazy, and there's a lot of like capturing the market going on, capturing the users going on. So when we started looking at the space, there were about 150 different asset bridges, right? And it was, I think, end of the bull market. I don't know which one now, but there were like Google Sheets going around where you would have a chain on as the row and another chain as the column, and you had to follow the Google Sheet to come to the list of bridges that support this cross-chain transfer, right? And then you would go to these websites, and some of them would rug you, and some of them won't. So you have to be careful out there. But when we started looking at this space, we were like, okay, why are there 150 different bridges, and why is no one winning, right? Like people have been building cross-chain bridges since Ethereum, basically, but no one has really won the market. Why? Right? So when we looked at the space closely, it became very clear to us that the space is the the nature of the industry is such that it's always going to be fragmented, right? Let me give you a quick example, right? So if you have, let's say, Aave, or if you have USDC and you want to buy ETH from it, right? You would go to DEXs, and the only thing you're trying to optimize is the maximum amount of ETH you can get for your, let's say, 100K USDC, right? So all you care about is the price. Where can I get the best price? That's the only thing you need to optimize for when you are, kind of working in the DEX world, right? Now let's bring you to the bridging world, right? So when you think about bridges, there are 5 things you have to think about, right? One is, let's say, how secure the bridge is, right? If I start the bridging, how long is it going to take before I receive my funds on the other side, right? Third is, how much is it going to cost? Fourth is, does it support the chain I want to go to or not? So chain support. Fifth is, does it support the token I want or not? So there are like 5 different things that bridges can kind of trade off between, right? So the nature of the industry is such that it is going to be fragmented at all times. No one can build a perfect bridge. So for us, it became very clear that there is a natural gap between people kind of building things based on these 5 trade-offs, and users and developers wanting to use these things. And the gap we filled via Socket's liquidity layer, which is kind of built out as a bridge aggregator almost, where people just plug into this thing, and this thing internally plugs into all of these different 150 different bridges. And now you don't have to think about if this particular bridge supports this token, this chain, how fast will it be, how cheap will it be, how secure it will be. Socket does that for you. You just come in, I have USDC here on Polygon, I want USDT on Arbitrum. Socket just makes it happen, right? So I think this is one of the reasons why we are able to kind of capture so much of this asset bridging market. And our bet is it's going to be this way. And also it's going to be this way because applications are going to build their own bridges, right? So we saw this happen with CCTP already, where Circle was like, hey guys, I mint USDC anyway, right? So I might as well become a bridge. So now CCTP is the most advanced USDC bridge across all chains. You can literally go from 10 million USDC on one chain to 10 million USDC on another chain and pay 0.001 in gas fees, right? And this is only going to increase. So yeah, that's kind of why we went in this route.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a really good way to look at it as well. So with I seen the Socket account was inviting people to come and break Socket DL.
Yeah.
Can you fill us in? Not many people invite people to come break their product. So can you fill us in what's going on there?
Yeah, man. So as I said before, yeah, like Socket's trying to be that thing where you just plug into it and it abstracts away everything. A user on Polygon can interact with an app on Arbitrum, which basically makes the names Polygon and Arbitrum pretty pointless. Because if you're able to send a transaction in Polygon and interact with an app on Arbitrum, where are they anyway? Like it's almost like they're on the same chain, or it's almost the same experience. So we are trying to elevate things to that level. To enable that, we built out this infrastructure called Socket DL, which is a cross-chain messaging protocol, which basically allows you to send bytes from one chain to bytes on another chain. So you can basically connect contracts with each other, right? So we built this out; it's working great. But then we started thinking, okay, how do we release this thing, right? Um, this thing has gotten hacked almost every time when it's put out there. Not from us, but from other teams, right? But we wanted to do a better job of not getting fucked. Yeah. So what's the best chance that we have, right? The best chance of surviving in this like adversarial environment is by open sourcing your code. That's step one. By open sourcing your code and by allowing people to kind of look at the code base, submit bug reports against it, kind of almost have this security arm, a community based security arm for your code development arm, right? So we kind of wanted to launch Socket Data Layer, and we launched in the sense that okay, we are going to put it on incentivized testnet, and people who break it, they will become our almost like our security arm. And together, us will develop the protocol, and the security arm will help us barrel test it at all times, make sure it's secure all time, run a bunch of monitoring at all times. Just having more people taking care of this code base. That's the purpose over here. So we launched this. We are calling it Socket Surge. It's right now happening. We've already found more than 10, vulnerabilities that could have been exploited out in the wild. We've already, kind of deployed, I think 50, 60, 100K USDC that have not been, kind of taken away. So it's pretty encouraging to see, how this, thing is shaping up. And we intend to do this more and more, man. I think just having more people care about what you are building and people who work in the security industry 24/7, it's a huge plus. We can totally expect people building on Socket to almost get approvals from the security arm of Socket, where they will look at their code base, help them be more secure. So it's more of like an ecosystem effort than kind of just launching a thing. Anyone can launch anything, but to do it in a way that's kind of trying to be as safe as possible, I think that's the key here that we are trying to go for.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of doing it. I know it's you see a lot of people go for like, I don't know, a code for arena audit and things like that, but obviously those cost a pretty penny if you want to do that. But it's a really, really smart way of doing it. I'm surprised you don't see a lot of other people doing that. I suppose they're probably scared if they open source too early and people get wind of the code and then just try and spin it up off the back. But is that why they don't do it, you think?
Yeah, man, it definitely takes a lot of balls to kind of put out an unaudited code base into public scrutiny. But in order to be secure, that's like the least price you could pay. So yeah, I think I don't think this approach makes sense for everyone, but it makes sense for things that need security. And I have a sense that a bunch of people are moving in this direction now. For example, if you talk to a bunch of like traditional auditing companies that work in this crypto space, they are also moving to now this like more community-based model where if you talk, we hosted a spaces with Consensus Diligence, which is the security arm of Consensus. They're also kind of opening up this thing called the Creed DAO, which is more of a community-based security auditing thing, right? So a bunch of people are kind of moving in the same direction, and we'll start to see more of this. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I like that. Is there anything you'd really like to see built using Socket, or is there anything that is kind of currently being built that's publicly
Oh yeah,
publicly available information that you think is really cool to bring up?
yeah, but a bunch of people are building some really cool stuff. For example, the stuff we did for GMX, gmx.socket.tech. That's really cool. There's a protocol called Superform, which is kind of like Yearn but across chain. So you just give it USDC, it will deploy it across multiple farms, across multiple chains. So that's super cool. I think the interesting thing about the infrastructure that we are building is we have, like, let's say about 10, 12, 15, 20 use cases in mind. The interesting thing about this piece of infrastructure is that it goes beyond our imagination. What I mean by that is, like, it's kind of like Vitalik when he first thought about EVM. He had like 5, 6 use cases in mind, but what actually happened was very different than what he had thought would happen, right? It's the similar thing with this stuff. We're building out the infrastructure that unlocks a lot of things. We can kind of extrapolate the current use cases and kind of think about how they would be built using this infrastructure. And we have like 15, 20 of those ideas. But my bet is that future will be a lot different than what we think it is right now. So the thing that we are really pushing for is a lot of experimentation. How do we build something like Aave that's like truly cross chain? How do we build something like ENS that's truly cross chain? And the way to get there might not be by extrapolating how things work right now, or just kind of making them cross chain, but thinking in a more like cross chain first fashion. So we want a lot of experimentation. We want to kind of participate in a lot of hackathons, get people actually build like crazy shit, which might not work in production, but it's sexy, it's cool. So I think we want to incentivize a lot of that. And I think from all of these experiments, we'll kind of get a sense of like, what does the ideal blockchain experience look like? And then we would have a much clearer understanding of like, what's the end game for all of this stuff.
Yeah, it always just takes that one piece of kind of key innovation for people to think, oh shit.
Yeah.
Then people iterate off the back of it, and it's the same with anything though, isn't it? Like anytime you start something and you think, right, I have this clear plan of what's going to happen, and then you start it, then 2 weeks later, and it's like something completely different. But you just have to start and see what happens. I think I always think people who try and overly plan and perfect an idea before they've even started something, it's just like, what is it, like perfectionism is the something about procrastination. It's like I don't get people.
I know exactly what you're going for.
I'm not one of those people. I just do shit and see if it works. If it doesn't work, then I just go and do something else.
That's it, man. That's it. Totally.
So what do you kind of see as kind of future vision? Is there anything that you'd kind of love to tap into in the near term? What's the kind of bigger picture? Obviously, we've just said things change at a rapid pace, particularly in this industry. But is there anything how you guys kind of think and foresee this thing playing out?
Yeah, I think so. The hot take right now is the entire kind of blockchain infrastructure space, as we know of it, is changing in real time right now in front of our eyes, right? For example, I mean, talking to other friends in the space, it's clear that everyone's pretty confused right now, given how aggressively the infrastructure is changing, right? Let me give you an example of everything happening on the infrastructure side right now, right? There is stuff like account abstraction, there is stuff like eigenlayer, there is L2s, there is cross-chain messaging, there is modular chains, there are data availability chains, there are rollups, there are roll-apps, there is IBC. So this whole kind of the TL that I'm getting at is we are at that stage where infrastructure has realized that it needs to adapt for more applications to be able to build on top. Like we've realized where the infrastructure is limiting us in terms of growth and the type of applications that can be built. And right now, the space is kind of figuring out what's the right infrastructure that the space needs for the next, 10,000, 100 billion app products to be built on top, right? For us, the kind of visual or like the thing that we're essentially going off is this platform where people deploy and they don't have to worry about what chains are. They just have to worry about them and their users, right? For us, the goal is to remove the network selector tab that's right now plaguing every single front end out there, right? The goal is to have people come to this place where they upload their Solidity code, they upload their Rust, they upload their Cairo, they upload their whatever language, and they tell us how much TPS they want. They tell us what's the security that they want, how much they want the users to be paying for every interaction, and that's it. They don't know if it's deployed on Arbitrum, they don't know it's deployed on Ethereum, and they don't have to care. So all kind of asset bridging, all kind of state bridging, all kind of messaging, it's handled by Socket. That's the kind of future we are kind of aiming towards, where things become truly like chainless almost.
Yeah, that's like where I'd love to see the end game of it. Particularly if because like the way I look at it, if you take it to the extremes, if you downloaded a fintech app, I don't know, the App Store or something like that, and you went onto it and there was way too much friction, you've deposited your funds in, but you can't do anything with it because you need another asset called Ethereum. Like what the hell's that? Why can't I just use it? That shit just doesn't fly in the real world. that shit just doesn't happen. And even the Uniswap wallet app, I know they've done some really good stuff with kind of more lowering the barrier to entry to kind of set up your wallet and things like that. But again, it's anything you can get away with removing those additional layers of confusion. Because for the first time user, I think it is still a bit of a pain in the ass. But I think when we eventually get to this promised land of when we don't know what assets what chains we're interacting on and things like that, I think it'll be much brighter than where we are now.
Yeah, man, and it starts like really small, and I see it's like the path to kind of reaching the final state that's accelerated right now quite a bit, given how many L2s are launching, because everyone's realizing in real time that this shit sucks, and we need to fix it, right? So it's getting there very quickly. I think I saw some wallet which basically showed me how much ether I have in the first glance. So it showed me, let's say 100 ETH. I don't actually have 100 ETH, but it showed me that I have 100 ETH. And when you click on it, only then it tells you how much of it is on Polygon, how much of it is on Optimism, how much of it is on Arbitrum, right? So that's a really good first start. So more of this, please. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of I think a lot of it can be solved with really good UI UX as well. People who, what was something I seen in a wallet the other day? Just even the fact down to like language and terminology that wallets use with inside their own wallet and things, like just make it as idiot proof as physically possible if you're still trying to onboard people. So I think we're probably going to look back at MetaMask in a few years and think, what the hell were we playing at? But seems like a lot of wallets getting funded at the minute.
Yeah, man. People will do anything right now for that cute little fox. But I think it's time we upgrade. What's your daily driver wallet?
I'm still using MetaMask like an idiot. But I'm gonna. You know what I used the other day, which was really interesting. So Phantom on Solana have got Polygon and Ethereum on it now, and I think Phantom wallet's pretty good. Never had any issues. Yeah. Quite interested by that. But a lot of people are saying Rabby. A lot of people are saying Uniswap wallet is excellent. I haven't used it myself personally, but what about yourself?
I think right now I'm on Frame on desktop, and I think Rainbow wallet on like mobile. Yeah,
it's strange that we're even having that discussion because it just feels like there's blood in the water for MetaMask, particularly with all this selling of data shit that's coming out. So
hopefully no more.
Might leave the fox behind.
Yeah, recommend no more news like this for the industry for sure.
All right, VC. Thanks very much for coming on. Really enjoyed chatting. Is there anything you want to like leave the audience with before we go that I might have missed off that you want to point people's direction towards?
No, I think would really kind of encourage people to kind of leave the biases aside and start looking more around like how do you get liquidity and customers onto your project. I think that's what it ultimately boils down to. And we are here at Socket to kind of help out on that front. And you've been an absolute great host. Thank you so much for having me on.
Very welcome. Anytime. If there's any new shit that you guys are pushing out, just let us know. We'll run it back.
Yeah.
But I'll leave all the Socket and Bungee stuff in the description below if anyone wants to check that out. But if you guys are on Discord, if people need questions straight from the source.
100%. We have Discord. You can also tweet at us. We reply pretty quickly.
All right, awesome. All right, thanks again, and take it easy, everyone. See you next time.